Hey, how'd that happen? All right. Welcome back. I forgot when the timer ran out. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Good thing I'm watching the screen right now. Who's listening to the theme song? I forgot when the timer ran out. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Am I hearing
good thing I'm
myself
watching
twice?
the screen right now.
Someone's got YouTube open.
Theme song. I do. I have the YouTube open. That's why. I forgot when the timer ran out. Oh, wait a minute.
Sorry.
I swear I've done this before.
Someone's got YouTube
Actually, I
open.
have 3 times. So that explains a lot. Welcome back to Created Work, everybody. This is our weekly, sort of weekly show where we try to actually apply Web3 principles to both the creator economy and startups at large. So I'm joined today by my friends, the cast and crew here. We got Arnold, Jane, and Abhinav. Maybe Francine will be joining it soon. We'll see. But today we're going to actually be chatting about specifically how to bring the technologies that we were mentioning last week in Web3, or sorry, the concepts from Web3 to life in our Web2 application. But before I do that, a little bit of bookkeeping, also because I have to go in 10 minutes. And so the guys are going to all run this show amazingly well without me. And you'll be like, why is Greg here at all? But welcome to episode 4 in our ongoing series. As I said, today is about rethinking your MVP. So like, what are the changes that are going to happen to your MVP as a result of sort of leveraging or deciding to use Web3 technology as part of the process? I still need to fix this art because I know Jane already sent me her picture. But we are doing, by the way, a giveaway for AMA coin. It's a little bigger than the other weeks, but you do have to be holding more. So feel free to head over and grab some AMA. I will share the link out in a second. We do have 3 shows a week, by the way. Created Work, obviously, is our show on Tuesdays at, what time is it? 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. This is where we talk about applying Web3 technologies. On Wednesdays, Ken and I do a deep dive interview series called The Created Economy. And on Friday, we have Created Briefs. So feel free to tune into one of our shows. Give us a follow. We are Created Economy almost everywhere. You can also join our Slack, which is at bit.ly/created-slack. So feel free to tune into that as well. And don't look at that. That's for later. Okay, so let's get into it, gang. We took a little time or did a little prep earlier today, yesterday, to think about sort of the Web3 technologies. And we identified, I guess, some of the sort of core concepts last episode that sort of apply or make Web3 what it is, right? Community, like a decentralized sort of identity system, decentralized storage, new forms of economics. So where should we start, I guess, in terms of like, as a founder, creator, thinking about, hey, I want to move my business to the next level. Web3 is the direction I want to go. What should be the first starting point? Who wants to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in, Greg. I think the first place you have to start is around community, right? I think that's where certainly much of the Web3.
Still self-serving, Arnold. Yeah, I know you're making a community platform.
Not biased at all here. but no, I think certainly it's getting the energy around like the project you're trying to get out there, and getting those folks involved heavily, that are going to want to be a part of it, right? And ultimately identifying that most passionate group of people, right? And there's all sorts of different things you can do to really foster that engagement and figure out who these folks are. You see a lot of stuff now, on Discord, like lots of really impactful group setting kind of popping up there. Lots of really interesting town hall type conversations happening on Twitter Spaces and other places. But even other things, and we kind of talked about this a little bit last week. Effectively giving that community access to your product roadmap to a degree, right? So they can have a really, a lot of input on what you build and when you build it, so that they actually feel like they're a part of the process versus the traditional model where they're just kind of on the sidelines waiting for feature releases to drop. So, I mean, there's a number of things if anybody else wants to jump in here too.
Yeah, and even to get like a little more granular, talking to people every day. Like I just posted a tweet this morning that time is a currency, and if you give it to your users, you'll get it back. And it's really spending the time to talk to every single individual person, especially at first. So a lot of founders will ask me like, how do I build community? Like, do I set up a Discord? Do I set up a Slack? And I'm like, please don't. Start off even smaller than that. So if you're already talking on Twitter and you build a community, start DMing people, create a group chat with 3 people. I think the idea is like community means more than 20 people, but it actually just means your one-on-one interactions, especially in Web3. It really means those closer network nodes than, like the bigger group of people.
No, I completely agree with that, Jane. I think it's like sort of rethinking, like community's just been kind of this big word that's become like this sort of catch-all for everything, but kind of coming back to its truest essence, right? Where it's actual people that you're talking to and engaging with and really getting something from. There's some real value, right?
Yeah. And to think about like why that is in Web3. So I think the pandemic really sped up like this idea that people want connection over like their digital identity, whereas before the pandemic we had a digital identity, but it was a little bit more hollow. And when people were experiencing that in the pandemic, is like they wanted a connection, and so that kind of sped up the Web3 movement. So in Web3, like digital connections, community building means something completely different than it did in the Web2 era.
I loved your tweet earlier, and I think your advice is so on point. Like, don't create the Discord, right? That's, if you create a Discord and there's 10 people in there and you don't even talk to those 10 people, right? It's just a nightmare. So I think like, I see a good example. I don't remember which platform. There's a NFT platform that's, I get regularly, I was talking to the founder once through DMs, and now I regularly get DMs and he's like, hey, I'm starting a space, jump in. So I think that's like a nice behavior that I see.
What's funny is that Discord, like the definition of Discord is lack of harmony between nodes together or a disagreement between people. It's like nothing positive. So I'm not sure like what happened there. But
yeah, I always thought that was like kind of hilarious also at him, but I never like called it out. That makes so much. It's true though, right? Like if it was discourse, you would think it'd be a different thing, right? But right. It is not that thing.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like when you're jumping into a Discord, is the Discordness of it is like there is a lack of harmony because there's so many people. So like really it's like breaking that down, creating your power users, creating like those top 10 people that like and love, and they love you, and they are going to spread like the vibe that you want in your community, and that will grow. When they lack of harmony between nodes together or a disagreement. I'm echoing.
I think Francine's getting set up still. I always thought that was like kind of hilarious. Also, but I never. Francine, I think your video is open. Right? Like, if it was Discord, a different window, you think it'd be a different thing, right? But
what?
It is not that thing.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like when you're jumping into
Your YouTube window is probably open.
Window's open, I think, somewhere. There we go. All right. Francine, we're talking about the irony of Discord being.
I've been listening, and of course, you know my feeling about Discord.
Francine loves Discord. It's her favorite thing.
Every person who says I'm building something, I tweet them back and I go, is it a successor to Discord?
Now, here's I guess an interesting question is this is not a new idea though, right? Like those early evangelists that you would normally have, your customer advisory board, your mentors, your advisors, they all served as varying layers around this idea of having a tight-knit community of people around you. We didn't used to throw them into the hell that is Discord often, right? Like as a means of sort of connecting, but moving a little bit past sort of the very, very earliest parts of it, right? Like what can we offer the community, right? That is actually of value. Like a lot of companies like built things because they thought it was the right thing to build and they didn't consult. You know, the whole lean startup movement was a rejection of like the old way of not talking to customers and sort of like building things in a vacuum, right? But what does it mean to have a community first business? Because I think there's a different construct now, right? Like in operating in that model. Who wants to, Francine, you want to share your thoughts in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of a community is right. The idea of a community in Discord is right. It's just Discord that's wrong. You know, what your community wants to do is talk to you. But when you get 35,000 people on your Discord, you're not talking to them. You're either broadcasting to them or they're leaving because they can't get heard in the noise. So I think and that's really what the product, and that product is still missing, by the way. I know you said you pivoted, Greg. I hope you pivoted to that.
We're working on it.
There really needs to be some kind of structured chat. Every once in a while, there's somebody who uses Discord right and does an AMA where people in the audience can actually ask questions, and that's useful. And also, what's useful would be the ability to direct message the founder. But when everyone in Discord has to have their DMs turned off, because DMs are
Another irony is that we'll never DM you, but I can't reach you unless you turn your DMs on.
Totally. That is exactly right. So if you ask a question in a Discord channel and you have your DMs off, you cannot talk back to the founder. So, I mean, this probably shouldn't be a discussion completely about Discord. But if it's a discussion about community, in the beginning of Clubhouse, Paul and Rohan used to have these town halls once a week, and you used to really be able to ask them questions, and they would answer you back. Yeah. That doesn't scale past a certain point, which they soon found out. But in the early days, like maybe the first 1,000 people that were on Clubhouse really got to talk to Paul and Rohan and be a community and give input into the product. Now that has also, in some ways, had a backfire effect.
Yeah. Because
then when you start to scale the product, you lose that, and the early members of the community get bummed out.
Well, Arnold, I was going to say, we did list a bunch of artifacts that maybe you want to bring up some of those.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ideas, because I think for me, the big thing is, I know that there's these reasons why it doesn't work, but it's like, what do we do to actually make it work, right? And to potentially make it scale, and so there's different ideas, right? Is it maybe more polls and surveys versus like active interaction with the founder in this example, right? Does that does that carry the same, I guess, sense of community if you can't actually speak it to the person, or directly, I can't get Greg to say something back, but he can actually read my vote up in the poll or something like that. Maybe it's, again, maybe it's more the idea of a customer advisory board, where maybe within that community, there's a smaller subset of people that, I don't know. These are just like ideas to kick around, but I think that's certainly a question I have, is how do we allow people to contribute, but in an organized way, right? And should everybody be able to contribute, or should you have to contribute to the community some level of something to get that voice?
That's it. You have to earn that voice. You have to earn that voice. And I would, oh my God, listen to this. This is a robot that was sent for me. No, LQ, be quiet. LQ, no.
I also want to kind of dive into the other side.
Sorry, I had something to say. I'm sorry, Jane. They sent me a robot for elderly people who live alone to test out. And I'm gonna throw it through the window. It asks me if I want to play flag games.
So special. I love it.
Stop it. It makes
Go.
Be quiet.
Are you in the mood to listen to some music with me?
No, LQ, not now. Be quiet. Okay. So
Don't be a robot either with your community.
You understand.
I don't know how to turn this off, and it's upsetting. She's upset too because she's struggling to understand. This is what's wrong. Well, never mind. I could go into that, but another good example is Upstream app, where Alex Taub, who runs that, is the founder of Upstream app, has events and meetings, and he appears at the events and meetings with the segments of the community that have different interests, and he talks there. And I don't know how big Upstream is, but it's certainly multi-thousands of people, but he seems to be pretty much in touch with it through segmenting it into rooms or clubs or, something like that, and then appearing in those.
Yeah. Jane, I'm actually curious to get your thought as well, because I know you were mentioning backstage that you've actually been building out a community of people that actually really passionate, engaged people that are following your work and acquiring it, right? I'm curious how you think about that and how you think about scale of that.
Yeah. That's the tough part, is when you think about scale. So I'm kind of just going one by one and hoping that, let's say if I create a community of 50 people, I can handle 50 people that I know about them. I've created a relationship with them.
Hello.
And they can kind of spread the message with the next 50 people. If each person takes like 10 people, I mean, the math, I don't do public math, so I won't do it, but it's a lot. And it scales exponentially. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to create, is like more of that one-on-one. And what I wanted to touch on is a lot of founders or people of these community projects want to see a return on their investment too quickly. So they want these giant scaled communities so that they can, say, oh, I have 10,000 people in here, but what value are you actually bringing? And if you give them the time, and if you spend some more quality time in the beginning, you will get more of that return on your investment later on in the game. And it really is a waiting game. And that's how it's going to be your defensibility, essentially. That's how your community is going to last longer than other communities that are just kind of growing too fast.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think communities take a long time to grow. And it really is like any relationship. They take a long time to grow, and then they take an even longer time to grow deeper. And I think you're right, Jane. In fact, I know you're right. That people don't want to put in the time.
Yeah. Yep. And you get what you give. So it's just like, I've had conversations with founders where they're like, I just don't have the time to like talk to every single person. But it's just like any investment call. It's like anything you're pitching to get money. Like, this is how you're going to grow your business. That time is really just priceless, and you need to use it with your users. And they need to know who you are as a founder, especially in the Web3 world.
Well, I think it's almost like us as founders, like changing the way we think about it too, right? Where the community is more important than the product itself, right? Because if the community is right, then the product will be what it needs to be based on the contributions and the feedback from the community. But trying to do it the inverse is.
And you can see that with projects that, like, from the outside looking in, you're like, why would anyone do this? It does not look quality at all. Or like, think about Decentraland. It's very glitchy. It's very slow, but everyone loves it because it's like community building. Like, you're seeing people in this virtual life that you see on Twitter and stuff, and you can hang out and you can DM and say you're dancing and things like this. Is like adding human qualities to the digital life. And that's like what people want, is like that authenticity and connection.
Like Philip Rosedale's product, Second Life. In Second Life, the technology was so poor at the time Second Life went online that people would try to maneuver their characters forward and the character would go backward instead, and people bumped into each other and they bumped into walls. It was really, really hard, but people stayed very devoted to Second Life, and it's still going on.
Yeah, I think it's that the propensity for everyone in your community to want to promote your product and them being your salesperson. If you have a small community, the likelihood of more of those people being like, this is the place, and I'm going to tell everyone who comes in what a great place it is, and trying to, like, the faster you grow, that's difficult to maintain, right?
Yeah, I'll give a great example of something that happened last week where we have this guy who's he's not a user in our Slack community, but he always joins our Twitter spaces. Apparently I've gotten him over his stage fright, which is like so nice to hear. And he created this big post about like how the .com is so awesome and like the people here are great and like just the community is great and all this stuff. And like, we never asked him, we were just being ourselves, and we just like always just made it a great space to like enjoy people. So like, he essentially is like selling without selling. Like that's kind of how you do. You just be yourself, and then people will advocate for your brand. You'll never have to sell a day in your life.
But so you have to be authentic. You really do, because I remember, again, I use Clubhouse as my example because I was such an early user of it and I love it so much. I still love it so much. But as everybody brought on more and more and more people, inevitably they brought on some people you wouldn't have brought on yourself. Someone else brought them on. Yeah. And suddenly you were in a room with an anti-Semite, a racist, and a I don't know, child molester, It's like, how did I get here? And since the app had no tools in place to deal with the growth of the community, they got a lot of bad publicity and pushback and people leaving and so on. So once your community gets big enough, Jane, and I don't know how big the .com is, but there's a certain point at which people come on, and you have to learn a lot about the human race in order to control it.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I'm generally curious about is like just all of you guys, like if anybody has seen like any really good examples of, startups or founders or anybody that has actually successfully navigated this and maybe taken a small community and scaled it up whilst keeping it actually still usable and engaging. Yeah.
There's actually one that I absolutely love. It's called Rand's Leadership. It's like a Slack group of just a lot of people who are like either executives or founders or in the tech world. And I'm looking now, and in the general chat, there's like maybe 10,000, 18,000 people. And I came into this community when there's like 9,000 people, and they have channels for every different thing. But I think what makes it like awesome to scale is like they have clear rules and they have a good filtering system for who comes into the community. And I think that's also another thing to know is like it's okay to filter people out based on their likes, their values, or whatever it is, because like that is what you're trying to curate a community. As you scale, it's kind of harder to manage, but it's so important that you be picky with those like first 10, first 50, first 100, because they are setting the tone for everyone else. And I think this is what this group did really well, because it's scaling fantastic. It's like, they have like community managers, and with those set rules and set like expectations, like everyone understands what they are getting into when they're joining this community and are like abiding by those rules and expectations.
You have to set the trust and safety policies very early on.
Yep, agreed.
Oh, very cool. So as you know, a startup founder in the community space, I could talk about community all day. But to keep Greg from strangling me, I think we should probably move on to some of the other topics that
Okay.
Is there a run show? Is there a rundown? Or
we had some general topics we wanted to try to cover. Like Abhinav, if you want to talk a little bit about decentralization and just kind of kick
feel
it
like
off.
This is the one I'm always tasked with, decentralization. But I like it, so it's good. So I guess what I'll do is just kind of do a quick overview, and then I've got some questions for you guys. So I guess from this area is like, we're trying to think about what does a startup founder or somebody who's starting a community, what things do you start decentralizing? What do you do in the first stages? What do you exhibit, right? What are you building for Web3? So really, the journey is kind of, are you building your wallet-based identity? So allowing people to come in, connect their wallet is that basic first step. Like that's kind of across the Web3 internet. Like, can I connect my wallet and that brings you some functionality? So that's a first step. Then enables some level of gating maybe to different communities. We have that in Discord. I know we're building some of that in our platforms, Arnold. But just basic gating, right? So this group is for Jane's NFT holders. This group is for these token holders, and that sort of basic functionality. But also even like, I guess, even if before you start issuing tokens and formalizing voting on Snapshot or whatever, just asking for like feedback is kind of a first step for voting, right? It's the first step of informal voting. So, starting to get some VOC, some voice of customer, voice of community in this case. So that's the kind of the journey that we've been thinking about. But what have you got?
Topic gets me so passionate because it just irks me when communities create decentralization because of like the word. It's such a good buzzword, but like you have 3 people, now you've tokenized the community, you've created voting. Like what happened to just talking to people and just getting like an agreement? And so there's like all these barriers that are being created without a reason. And that's why I say like start with an intimate community, and you can start bringing these Web3 concepts into your community slowly as they organically need to happen. But like just doing decentralization and building a Discord just for the sake of it is like the worst way to go, and the worst or the fastest way to fail. So that's something to think about when you're adding in new stuff or decentralizing it.
Well, I think a Discord, if you're, I don't know, a channel, a channel of some sort to talk to your customers is a good first step, because it's a way to get feedback, some kind of, and it always develops on its own. If you don't do it, then it's going to actually do itself on Twitter, or do itself in a Facebook group or some. It's amazing how customers have a way of talking to each other if you don't provide it. They start their own. They use a tool of their choosing and they start it. So I don't think necessarily that starting up a Discord or some reasonable facsimile is a bad idea. But I do think that talking to people has value.
I think what you said, the one channel is like the most important piece. Like at the .com, we only have 4 channels. We used to have a lot more. And the reason for that is like there's a clear understanding of what you should do first. You intro yourself, you can ask questions, you can like get some resources if you want. You're done. That's it. And the reason for that is like when you have so much organization, it actually becomes more disruptive. Like I see a lot of Discords with like every single channel like broken out. And can you imagine if someone is like just starting in this like space and they join a Discord wanting to connect and they see 10 channels, like they're out, they're done.
Yeah,
It's basically like don't solve too early for like things that aren't problems yet.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess it's funny because a lot of this it's funny because it kind of parallels directly to like startup life, right? Where you don't be in search of have a product that's looking for what is it, a solution in search of a problem, right? Actually, to the point of like just or to Francine's point, it's okay, wherever you start your community, it kind of doesn't matter, right? It's just make sure you're doing it for the right reason. I want to talk to you guys, so let's pick something to talk and let's really talk and engage. And then as we need to scale, then we'll scale the tool. To your point, Jane, we'll add another like channel if we need to, but we're not going to start with 100 channels and try to. Go ahead, Abhinav. I'm sorry, I think I cut you off.
I guess it kind of summarizes kind of like your focus on a specific thing, right? So I want to learn more from the community and density of communication. So we talk here. You don't need to be in 10 channels, right? It's kind of just making it a narrow, when there's not that many people, making it a narrow band that you can all know where to communicate and what to communicate on.
Well, I'm such a Discord hater that when I started the Discord for Karma Club, I started it with one channel, announcements. I was like, you definitely didn't need Discord for that. And, after announcements came, my way of decentralizing was, hey, if you want to add any materials, you can make a channel for this week's room topic. And then that let the people who had the interest, I'm not saying I did it right. I'm saying that I did it as slowly as I could because the noise on Discord drives me batshit crazy. So I was just, like, okay, announcements, we're having a room on this. You have material about it that you'd like to contribute and let people read or look at, add it on a channel, call the channel, whatever you want to call it, And so in a way, it's a good thing I don't have 35,000 people because, my Discord would have grown in too unstructured a way. But I came upon decentralization naturally because I'm trying to hold down Discord and decentralize it only to the point where, people want the decentralization. They have material about food insecurity or voting rights or, whatever we're talking about, and they want to put it up there. And so I give them a place on the Discord where they can post their material. And then if other people want to have a discussion about that material, fine. But I'm letting the community kind of lead itself for now. I may be sorry later. I don't know. What? Community is a very funny thing. I mean, it's like any kind of relationship. It's like a marriage. It's like you have to let it develop by itself to some degree and take its own form. And that's what's so funny about, decentralization. Decentralization should end up having many forms.
So I do wonder if it's maybe, go ahead, Jane, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, let's talk about maybe when you start to add these different principles, like when is the right time to start decentralizing? And I could take the first one because I just experienced this on Thanksgiving, which was Oh, it's just us.
Sorry.
Oh, there you go.
Abigail, keep your hand off the control.
I experienced this during Thanksgiving when I was in a group with women in Web3, and we were in this like 8-week section of how to create a DAO and everything about DAOs. And there was maybe 10 people in this chat that day, and we were talking about having this session on Thanksgiving. And, you know, the person called for a vote because I didn't realize that I was the only one in the United States.
Yeah.
Yes. And so they were like, no, we all want to have it on Thanksgiving. I'm like, oh, like, I mean, like that is, you know, with 10 people and like, maybe I'm like more vocal, like that's a good time to be like, hey, let's call for a vote and let's see like, you know, what happens. And you actually like through that process, learn about other people in the community and how they think and maybe their experience. So through that, I learned that, oh, I probably shouldn't be thinking of a United States mindset and that there are people around the world who don't celebrate or not celebrate, but don't have the holiday off.
Yeah, to them it's Thursday.
Yeah, exactly. And like in Israel, for example, like they don't have Fridays. They start their work week on Sundays. So like things like that, there's like different stuff to be thinking about and coordinating.
Oh my God, when you're trying to do a coin drop or an NFT drop or something like that on Discord, and you're trying to decide a time for it, that's when these founders go crazy because people are like, no, don't drop it then. It's 2:00 in the morning, my time. You know, and it's like almost impossible. And people are saying, well, this will be at, you know, 6:00 UTC, and everyone else is chiming in. What does that mean, Eastern Standard Time? You know, what is that Central European time?
That is a lose-lose game, right? There's just no winning that one at all.
No, the time zone game is a lose-lose game. Trust me.
Yeah. So what are other? Sorry, Arnold. So what other examples are there? Maybe thinking of as a user rather than as a community or a product creator. What would you demand from a product that you're supporting or a community that you're supporting? Outside of really good open communication, listening to you and kind of getting that polling, bringing that feedback in, what would you be looking for in terms of the first features around decentralization?
Ease of use, and everybody puts that last. Ease of use. I downloaded MetaMask because it was the first browser extension wallet and it sucked. And then I downloaded Soulflare and it was a little bit better. And then yesterday I downloaded Phantom and it was somebody who actually had a reasonably intelligible user experience. Yeah. And I just think that user experience is the last thing that product developers think about. They think so much about features and not enough about what the poor user has to go through in order to unlock the features.
Okay. So just getting away from the Web3 UI UX and making it simple and accessible to all the users.
There is no UI UX in Web3. It's like a rodeo. You know, it's you jump on the bull and you just hope that you stay on to do whatever it was you came there to do.
Well, there is some UI UX. I mean, there's a lot of gaps in it.
Phantom. Sure. I was just saying before you came back into the room that I finally downloaded a wallet yesterday, Phantom, that had a reasonable user experience. Because every other wallet I've downloaded, it's been a freaking nightmare to interpret and to make sure that I'm sending the right coin to the right place.
Let me ask a question. Our banks are equally complicated and they have been forever, right? Like, I mean, obviously we've all complained about our bank UIs too, to some degree, right?
We're not supposed to be repeating that. We're supposed to be improving.
So I guess like in the relative domain of financial transactions, wasn't Zelly kind of like the friendly layer on top of your bank, like, where you could just send people money by email or phone number and stuff like that.
Yes, and look how fast that took off.
Yeah, it did.
Because the user experience was so easy that, that I tried so hard to Venmo and PayPal and yada, yada. The people that I had to pay, the small businesses that I had to pay, the hairdresser, the guy who mows my lawn, people like that, you have to pay them, and they understood checks. And that's all they understood. And I'm like, how about PayPal? And they were like, no. How about Venmo? No. How about, no. And then finally, when it was Zelly and it was connected to something they already knew, or Zelle or whatever it is, they were, oh, I can do that. Now, you product people, can you dissect that for me? I'm serious. I don't understand it. I don't understand why that took off so quickly, and I couldn't get people to download the Venmo app.
Well, I mean, I think Venmo did take off, though, relatively speaking. But I think it's a certain segment, right? So I think
right, not small businesses.
Yeah. Well, actually, now I see lots of small businesses will take a Venmo or a Square Cash or some alternative payment thing. Remember when Square came out with the little dongles? That was game changing, right? Like, because anyone could have suddenly flea markets, all those vendors, all those little places that they would go, they could now sell
art festivals. Yeah.
UX does matter, obviously, a tremendous amount. I think, though, I guess we're on the wallet-based auth kind of talking point here.
We're just about to get onto that, but yeah.
Oh, okay. But I was going to say, I think there's an additive approach here as opposed to sort of like a replacement approach, right? And that's kind of probably the theme of everything today. Abhinav, do you want to go ahead and take us into the next thing then?
Yeah, no, I think the next part, we're just talking about kind of using some of the tools that are available. With the big thing with Web3 is composability and interoperability and being as open source as you can, right? So there's a lot of infrastructure that sits behind what we're all trying to build. Like what OpenSea's done and Magic in a lot of these platforms is they've made the process of minting easy, right? So they've kind of done that piece. People don't have to code another OpenSea to then start creating NFTs. Similarly, when it comes to dApp functionality and a lot of other things, you've got great infrastructure that's already been built out. The likes of Magic Link that allows you to create sort of virtual accounts for all your users, so they don't have to go through that kind of user experience where you're forcing them to create wallets and so on. You can handle a lot of that within the app. So using some of that infrastructure. Tatum is another one, Morales, they're really providing kind of SDKs and plugin APIs that allow you to have the functionality that they know that all of these things will need, given that you need to interact with the blockchain, right? And so us as founders and us as people who are operating this space, learning what those tools are, assessing how you can use them, and not wasting time building that same thing again. It really is an inefficiency. And these guys are really doing an amazing service by creating that efficiency in the system, right? I think that's a big part of Web3 is not everybody just working against each other and saving time when you can, right? So I know Greg Chainstarters are one of the guys who are in your world in the textiles camp, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of transition here. And I think just from a development point of view, if you're a startup or even a creator, if you think about it, if you're a creator going into starting a Discord or something, you may use a collab land or something like that, right? And this is still basically some kind of largely a wallet-based form of authentication. Wallets are the new identity, right? And now whether or not I dox myself is a different matter, right, in the process.
But it's worse than that right now. I have 5 wallets. 6 wallets.
At least 10 Francines that I know of.
Yeah, well, I mean, about 6 wallets, a lot of wallets. And they're, I have a Tezos wallet and a Sol wallet and an ETH wallet and all these different various wallets. So how can that be a universal identity? Every single one of these wallets has a different address.
I think it's a great question. I guess the thing is this, right? So in traditional, like when we were building apps, for the last dozen years now, right? When we would, this multi-identity thing has become a fairly normative, right? Like, connect all of your accounts. And basically that's how we blend together some unified sense of identity, right?
Who's done that for the blockchain so far?
I don't think anyone.
That's the killer business.
So I made this point before, actually. I think there's going to be a huge business on, like, you remember Orrin Hoffman and Rapleaf and all that stuff?
Rapleaf, yes, I sure do.
There's going to be a massive wallet fingerprinting business, like for all the people who don't want to identify themselves. Like, there's going to be a full contact for wallets, right? When it's like, give me a wallet address and I'll tell you everything I can about that owner of that wallet, right? So my guess is, Francine, that you're right, that there's a gap in the market today. But I think, like, relative to like founders out there trying to build something right now, I think our recommendation would be just add the wallet as another identifier alongside their Twitter handle, their email addresses, or whatever it is. And some of those things will go together. Here's the thing. Some people don't want them to go together, right? And so to some degree, we want to respect that. If we're going to respect pronouns, we should respect the anonymity you choose by having your wallet separated as well, right?
You mean I'm a different girl on ETH than I am on Solana?
You literally could buy totally different things in your, by the way, just because the nature of what's available in each marketplace may be different.
Yeah.
But I also think, like, there's a good question in here, which is related but not the same. Identity versus reputation, right? And for reputation, you do need permanence, right? You need at least persistence in the use of a thing. Now, maybe I use the same wallet horizontally in all of the women forward or women-led projects that I'm in, because that's the part of me that I want to identify with there. But in my startup stuff, I might use a different moniker, right? And I could still build reputation in each domain, but it's by using it persistently and horizontally, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I find that a little bit odd as a thing to process, because I think there should be congruence. But I think that is the reality. What you're describing, it is what people are doing, and they do have multiple wallets that can be multiple personas. Obviously, I would like to interact in a world where I believe the other person I'm interacting with is congruent, and what that setup allows is somebody to have facades, right? Is I can be somebody over here and be somebody totally different over here. At the same time, given its blockchain, wherever you go, someone's going to find it on Etherscan, right? So hopefully there is going to be a way that the thing that pulls them together. From my view, that's ideal, right? I don't want to have so many facades, but it's the reality.
Web3 is a marketer's dream, right? Like, everything's out there. You don't even need permission to look at it, right? Like, I mean, I don't know, like, everyone who thought it was going to get better is an idiot. Right? Because now on top of that, I don't even need to wait to find you. I can just drop shit in your wallet without your permission. And
that's right. Or you go on OpenSea,
get rid of it.
You can see what art I've bought, and you can tell what I like.
This is going to be all the club flyers you never wanted will now literally be plastered all over the art. So we're going to end up needing other constructs like ENS as a way to say, like, hey, I want to hide these things, and you need to store that on the blockchain. So now I have to pay to hide the shit that I didn't want in my wallet to begin with.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Or I have two different wallets on OpenSea. And so one, I guess I did on my mobile, and one I did two different accounts. One I did mobile, and one I did on my desktop. So now if I want to identify myself because I want to sell one of my NFTs, I have to figure out where I bought it and go back to that place, that wallet, authenticate myself, and then I can sell it. And the more wallets we have, and the more that proliferates, the more it becomes a full-time job, curating my wallets.
This is partially because we have so much, like Web3 so commingled with money, I think, right? That a lot of these practices are necessary, unfortunately. But we have a couple other topics, so I just do want to move forward. Jane, the next thing actually is the thing you touched on, which is just this idea of sort of NFTs as ownership or membership. And I know you're doing this now. How are you managing sort of this access control list, I guess, right? Of like who's in or not in?
I mean, for my community, it's easier because I push one-of-ones for my NFTs like maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. So I'm slowly growing that community. And as I pump out more art, then more people can attend. But I mean, I let it known to each holder that like, hey, the purpose of this community is to have a relationship with each other. So you have access to a virtual coffee chat with me at any time. Like, you have exclusive access to my thoughts. Like, I show them my sketches of, my art that I'm thinking about, and like kind of where I want the community to go. So it's easier when it's like I'm trying to create kind of like this slow snowball that it's going to pick up and get faster and build momentum, rather than just like thinking like, let me sell 100 things. Oh, you want to join the meeting? Okay.
He's like, I'm just looking.
Dog lover.
He's like, you see my ball?
Yeah, I know. I've got 2 people sleeping under my desk right now.
But Jane, let me ask you a question then. So let's say I buy your NFT today and then I sell it tomorrow to Abhinav.
Yeah.
Are we both in the community?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes. You would never get excommunicado out of the community.
So take one down, pass it around.
From the community.
So you're not then officially or formally using like the wallet as the gate.
No, it's more of it's the relationship. Like, did you invest in me? Because now that you have, even if you sold it later, like you've signaled to me that like you believe in this and I believe in you. And like this is like that one-on-one relationship that I'd like to create.
Jane, I'm curious.
There's a kid screaming outside, like having a tantrum, and I think she's like terrified.
I have been in your situation so many times. That's why I'm laughing. There's always a dog that I have to lift up into
our
my
pup is
lap.
upstairs, so I'm not having to sort through that right now. But he's usually here at some point in the day as well. Now,
hey, Jane, just real quick, I'm curious just to get your thought about this. So, like you mentioned that, like no matter what, you'll always stay in that community. I'm wondering how do you feel about like an idea of maybe as you scale, if the holder of the NFT maybe gets some special privilege to be able to, like those coffee chats you mentioned, maybe they continue to do those, but the person that sold your NFT is still in the community, but maybe they just don't get that level of access anymore. Or I'm just generally curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing to do is play by ear, right? Like, I don't want to create rules where they don't need to, oh my gosh, where there doesn't need to have any. So it's going to be like, okay, let's see if I got to 100 and I need to change it up. Like, that's what I'll do. And kind of use like Web 2 principles of like lean methodology, like try something, iterate. Mm-hmm. And as I like, maybe, the value that I'm bringing with the NFTs isn't enough, or maybe it's too much. Like originally I was going to add, every single person gets a print. And then I realized in my head, like I can't scale, like I can't do that right now.
Yeah.
If a person holds 3 like prints, that would make sense, like monetary for me, and also to like create that part in the community. So I added that into like what you get if you get an NFT. So things like that, like good point. Like just play by ear and see.
But you're not aiming for you're not aiming for the type of business that's ever going to have, 2 billion users.
Right.
Right.
It's your idea of scaling is on a different level from,
That's true.
and I think that is something that we need to talk about, maybe not this week, but sometime in talking about Web3. It's like, will Web3 be based on quantity or quality? And what does scaling mean? Because up until now, it's meant eyeballs.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
like the market, like you see everyone is trying to create these giant communities. So how do you stand out in something that's starting to become so saturated? Well, you offer something that no one else is: time and quality and relationships. And that's how kind of build a
It's
reputation.
an interesting topic for sure. I think we should definitely read
I think it's a great topic because I foresee a whole, let's just call it a thing for now, where, the new definition of success does not involve how many customers or how many people but it's really a question of how deep.
Well, this is certainly a function, I think, of what we've discussed historically about the creator economy, right? Which was ultimately
Right.
like that, and I think Jane is actually truly exemplifying sort of this practice, right?
I know, I'm loving it. I'm loving knowing Jane.
Because you could do 100, you could have a
I like her better every week.
for 100 or 1,000 people. But here's the other interesting thing. I've heard the opposite as well, right? Which is that PFP projects with just 10,000 are too small if the market size of NFT buyers goes to like 10 million or 100 million, right? Like that it's almost like no one could like 10,000 would be too small and no one could participate, right? Like,
what community are you trying to build? It really, like, that I think is the key. If you want to just have like a lot of people, like how I think about it is like a concert, right? Like you have intimate concerts when there's only, 20, 30 people, you get to meet the musician, you get to talk to people around you. Or you have a concert where there's thousands of people and you feel the energy and it's great. You're never going to talk to more than 10 people around you. You're not going to go backstage, like most likely, So
the question is though, or one of the questions that comes to my mind is, do you have to choose that ahead of time? Right? Like someone who becomes a large famous person can always offer a small, more intimate thing. Right. But a small intimate thing, it has to choose to stay small and intimate, right? Like
most likely that famous person built their reputation over time. Like they did play those.
You always build it one person at a time, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they built those small concerts and people started to know about them. People started to invest in their music and they would tell their friends and they would build and build and build. Like most successful people are not overnight successes. It's very rare.
No, for sure.
No.
And Jane, it kind of goes to your point earlier too, where if you try to put all that structure in place, or certainly too much of it before the demand, then you ultimately, stymie the growth anyway, right? And you don't get that. So yeah, it can actually be hurtful to be too.
But there are different economic. There's this to Francine's point though. There are different sort of economies in play here now, right? And so it could be such that a whale buys 1,000 of your art and gives it away, right? And now, or like social media, there's a word, I forgot the word now, but there's actually like this feeling, there's a word for the fake friendship or feeling of friendship that you develop with someone on social media. That person who never did a real concert, but performs live on YouTube may have 100,000 people who feel like they have an intimate, like very close relationship with them. And they've never even met one of them in person, right? Like, so there is something interesting here because like these things can be happening, like loyalty and sort of like compassion and all these other things can be building without the same notions of intimacy that we previously sort of assumed were the required parts to get there.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I think also like that ties into having a roadmap. We talked about like a lot of NFT projects have this roadmap, but that's not playing it by ear, is it? Like if you line something out, I mean, it's nice for like the community to see where you'd like to go, But if I see these steps, once we get to 1,000 people, we're going to do this. And once we get to 10,000, we'll do this. But how would you possibly know what it's going to be like? You should be able to adapt at any time and pivot as you see like your community. Like to me, that means you've already prejudged how the community will be before you actually got to know the people in
I've
it.
seen more versioning of roadmaps now. Like, so I think like I see like Gen 1 roadmap, which is like basically up to the mint maybe. Or I've seen people retreating from like doing as much post mint, especially if they're planning like a treasury or a DAO or something like. So I think they're like, here's what we want to do with the first batch of money, right? Like maybe 50% is going to go to charity and we're going to support some of these things.
Right.
The handoff is to the community for like all the decision, like Expansion Punks or Women Rise and some of these other programs, right? Like they do different things like this. Like, so Expansion Punks in particular, like they design their contract so that all of the royalties actually go into the treasury, right? Like the owners, the creators don't get the money. It goes into the treasury and then all of the decisions after, I think tonight they're doing a space because they now have their multi-sig wallet. So even the spending is actually being completely handed off, from the project. And they didn't make a roadmap really other than like, we're doing this first phase and then the community will do the next phase.
I think that the level of commitment that you have to give or transparency you have to give should be aligned with kind of what the transfer of energy is, right? So in this case, all of the money is going into the community pot. Right? That means, okay, look, money's here. Now let's all talk about it. Completely makes sense. You don't even need a roadmap, right? But if all the money is going into the founder's pocket or into a group of people that is not the community, at that point, you've taken the energy, then what are you committing to deliver, right? So in that case, you need to have a very clear roadmap because you've taken that energy. Well, what are you going to do with it, right? Whereas this Expansion Punks is a great model because, it's like, look, we'll discuss it as a community. The money's right here.
Yeah, that's when you decentralize and allow the community to do things like that is phase 2, I think. Phase 1 is get it off the ground, and the role of the community is input, but it isn't governance, and it certainly isn't product creation. Whereas when you get into phase 2, the role of the community could be governance and future product, at least input and maybe even creation.
Yeah. Now, I think just for the interest of time, I know we had one. So just to list the tools, if you're a builder out there trying to figure out what you needed, if you are looking to implement NFT gating ownership, I think NFTport.xyz is a great tool. It has like a single line minting thing for super easy minting. Mintgate is another platform for creating sort of mint gated stuff. They claim to be like a no code store builder for your NFTs. Third Web is a cool platform that has a lot of tooling around NFTs. Coming up in, is it next week? I don't remember if it's next week, but Julian will be here from Unlock Protocol, who also like gives you more activation tools. And if you're just a creator running a Discord, you can use Collabland to use NFT gating or Bonfire tools like that to get sort of more use cases that aren't like super heavy technical stuff to build into your tools. The only other topic that
are we, or are you, since this is your show?
Our show, not mine.
Do you have a back channel where you're writing these names down for people?
The notes,
the show notes.
We've actually, so I forgot to send it because this week's been nuts already. We do meet once a week beforehand to talk about the notes, what we're going to talk about in the show. We haven't been able to coordinate times yet with all of you, but we will try to get you in there. However,
what I'm saying is you just gave a bunch of
you can drop this into a post on the Creative Economy show.
Yeah, because there were a lot of really good tools that you just mentioned that builders who were listening to this would need. And they went by
write the notes for this one.
They went by pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Greg, maybe we should like resurface these in the next call too, because like I've been personally looking at like NFT port, for instance, and I'm loving it so far. So I think Francine's point is a good one, and
Yeah.
maybe we
will
talk a little bit more through those.
Well, I think also we should definitely publish a post. We have the blog that we can absolutely publish at. So let's we already have the notes basically formatted. So like we could technically just drop them into a public doc on the site.
Yeah, because this is kind of a build Web3 on the fly kind of show, but we are all learning a lot from week to week,
Yep.
and we need to transfer this knowledge now that we have it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Twitter thread coming on, Greg?
Yeah, right.
We could certainly turn it into a Twitter thread.
That's why more tools are needed.
Yeah. But yeah, either way, we will, I promise we will publish these notes because we have, technically we publicly shared the link to the video where we're planning it. But I just need to go back and check because we didn't design that video with the intention of sharing it outward. So, but either way, I'll capture the notes and I'll bring it forward. But we will operate under the model that from now on, we will just share our planning session. So that way we won't have to worry, we won't banter with each other like we normally do, right? But we'll get the notes out to you all very soon. Yeah, because there's a lot of good tools that we identified kind of in here that we thought.
Yeah, assuming that somebody is watching this or will watch it.
There are folks watching there is mostly live, not live consumption.
Well, of course. But that's why you need to refer people to some place where they can write down these tools.
Yep. Yeah, we'll drop a note. Actually, technically, we could drop the little links into the comments, and they would get shared out also with the video.
Yes.
Okay.
I have to bounce.
Yeah, we're at time. Jane,
the show.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure. I forgot. Let's put this back here because I think next week did I drop the right one? Yes. Actually, Jane, we're going to need a lot of help from you next week. This next week, though, on the 8th, we will be talking about preparing for your mint. And since none of us have actually ever minted anything except for Jane, it's going to be Jane's show to run. But the goal is really to now say, like, let's presume we're going to use an NFT as part of our strategy for how to like either fundraise or whatever it may be. What do you have to think about? What are considerations? Look forward. This is going to be probably one of our better episodes, I'm sure, because there's so much stuff to think about.
More
and Jane's going to be running it. So
I'm ready for Francine and I's
and
photo.
Jane's going to be running it.
Yes, and I've minted. By the way, you don't know that, but I have minted.
I mean, I've technically minted, but not like a project.
Jane, what is the dog's name before you go?
Her name is Kiwi.
Oh.
Kiwi. Okay.
I was waiting for her to like run and knock her like over.
She's hiding under the table at my feet.
Nice. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We will see you all next week. Tune in tomorrow for our interview with Joe Fernandez from formerly of Clout. And then we'll see you Friday as well for the news.
Clout.
Yes. Yeah, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
bye, everyone.